American Government and Politics Study Guide. This is for Unit 2, Interactions Among Branches. Because power is widely distributed and checks prevent one branch from usurping powers from others, institutional actors are in the position where they must compete and cooperate in order to govern. Three key institutions of federal government are Congress, the presidency, and the courts. The bureaucracy, which implements policy, is seen by some as an extension of the executive branch and by others as, in effect, a fourth branch of government because of the discretion it can exercise in carrying out policy and directives. The Constitution grants specific powers to Congress, the President, the courts. In addition, each branch exercises informal powers developed through political practice, tradition, legislation. Because checks and balances are designed to prevent one branch from becoming too powerful, Congress and the President, for example, will sometimes cooperate, sometimes compete in governance. The powers of Congress are set forth in Article 1 of the Constitution. Congress is bicameral, with the Senate representing states and the House of Representatives reflecting each state's population. Congress passes law that cover a wide range of policy areas, and each chamber has different responsibilities and rules. The federal budget is a good example of how the President and Congress must cooperate and compromise. While Congress is empowered to develop and pass a budget, in the modern era, the President typically proposes one, which may lead to ideological debate. There are several reasons it is difficult for Congress to pass legislation, including ideological differences. Much of the work of Congress is done in committees, and congressional committees also exercise oversight to ensure that the bureaucracy is carrying out policies as intended. The express powers of the President are set forth in Article 2 of the Constitution. The President has a significant degree of informal power, which has grown over time. Under the Constitution, Congress checks the power of the President, and this leads to tension between the two branches over foreign policy and domestic affairs. The President and Congress have several interrelated powers. For example, while Congress passes legislation, the executive must sign it into law. The President appoints judges and members of the cabinet who must be confirmed by the Senate. The President also oversees most of the bureaucracy. Technology has impacted the President's use of the bully pulpit to influence public opinion. In addition, by reaching out to the public through televised press conferences and the State of the Union message, the President is increasingly making use of social media to communicate views to a vast audience. The federal judiciary, including the Supreme Court, established under Article 3, is designed to be an independent branch of government. The court's most far-reaching power, judicial review, was justified in Marbury v. Madison, 1803, where the court declared that it had the constitutional authority to overturn acts of Congress, state laws, or executive actions deemed to be unconstitutional. Thus, judicial review serves as an important check on the other branches of government. Appointed for life, justices are somewhat insulated from public opinion. It is not surprising that over the years the court has handed down decisions that have been unpopular and controversial. Congress and the President may influence the court through the appointment process, by refusing to implement a court decision, or by passing legislation that changes the court's jurisdiction. Using a merit-based civil service system for all staff except top-level political appointees, the federal bureaucracy carries out laws to regulate a wide range of individual and commercial activities. Bureaucrats implement policy using their discretionary and rulemaking authority. Both Congress and the President can hold the bureaucracy accountable in policy implementation, and the two branches will sometimes be in conflict over whether or not administrative agencies are carrying out the letter and spirit of the law. Below are the learning objectives, bold headings, and the essential knowledge check boxes for Unit 2. Can you check all the boxes? Terms in bold are the required documents or required Supreme Court cases. Pay close attention to them. Describe the structures, powers, and functions of each House of Congress. Different chamber sizes and constituencies influence formality of debate. The Senate is designed to represent states equally, while the House is designed to represent the population. Different chamber sizes and constituencies influence formality of debate. Coalitions in Congress are affected by term length differences. Enumerated and implied powers in the Constitution allow the creation of public policy by Congress, which includes passing a federal budget, raising revenue and coining money, declaring war and maintaining the armed forces, enacting legislation that addresses a wide range of economic, environmental, and social issues based on the necessary and proper clause. Explain how the structure, powers, and functions of both houses of Congress affect the policymaking process. By design, different structures, powers, and functions of the U.S. Senate and House of Representatives affect the policymaking process. Though both chambers rely on committees to conduct hearings and debate bills under consideration, different constitutional responsibilities of the House and Senate affect the policymaking process. Chamber-specific procedures, rules, and roles that impact the policymaking policy include the number of the chamber, the debate rules that set the bar high for building majority support, roles of the Speaker of the House, President of the Senate, party leadership, and committee leadership in both chambers. Filibuster and cloture, which is in the Senate, holds in unanimous consent in the Senate, roles of the Rule Committee, Committee of the Whole, discharge positions in the House, treaty ratification and confirmation role of the Senate. Congress must generate a budget that addresses both discretionary and mandatory spending as entitlements costs grow. Discretionary spending opportunities will decrease unless tax revenues increase, the budget deficit increases. Pork barrel legislation and log rolling affect lawmaking in both chambers. Explain how congressional behavior is influenced by election processes, partisanship, and divided government. Congressional behavior and governing effectiveness are influenced by ideological divisions within Congress that can lead to gridlock or create a need for negotiation and compromise. Gerrymandering, redistricting, and unequal representation of constituencies have been partially addressed by such court decisions as Baker versus Carr in 1961, which opened the door to equal protection challenges to redistricting and stated the one person, one vote doctrine, and the no racial gerrymandered decision in Shaw versus Reno in 1993. Elections that have led to a divided government, including partisan votes against presidential initiatives and congressional refusal to confirm appointments of lame duck presidents of the opposite party, different role of conceptions of trustee, delegate, and politico as related to constituent accountability in each chamber. Explain how the president can implement a policy agenda. The president uses powers and perform functions of the office to accomplish a policy agenda. Formal and informal powers of the president include vetoes and pocket vetoes. Formal powers then enable the president to check Congress. Foreign policy, both formal, commander-in-chief, and treaties, and informal, executive agreement, powers that influence relations with foreign nations. Bargaining and persuasion, informal power that enables the president to secure congressional action. Executive orders, implied from the president's vested executive power or from power delegated by Congress. Executive orders are used by the president to manage the federal government. Signing statements, informal power that informs Congress and the public of the president's interpretation of laws passed by Congress and signed by the president. Explain how the president's agenda can create tension and frequent confrontations with Congress. The potential for conflict with the Senate depends on the type of executive branch appointments, including cabinet members, ambassadors, White House staff. Senate confirmation is an important check on appointment powers, but the president's long-lasting influence lies in life-tenure judicial appointments. Policy initiatives and executive orders promoted by the president often lead to conflict with the congressional agenda. Explain how the president have interpreted and justified their use of formal and informal powers. Justification for a single executive as set forth in Federalist Number 70. Term of office and constitutional power restrictions, including passage of the 22nd Amendment, demonstrated changing presidential roles. Different perspectives on the presidential role and widening, ranging from a limited to a more expansive interpretation and use of power, continue to be debated in the context of contemporary events. Explain how communication technology has changed the president's relationship with national constituency and other branches. The communication impact of the presidency can be demonstrated through modern technology, social media, rapid response to political issues, nationally broadcast State of the Union messages in the president's bully pulpit used as tools for agenda setting. Explain the principle of judicial review and how it checks the power of other institutions and state governments. The foundation for powers of the judicial branch and how its independence checks the power of other institutions and state governments are set forth in Article 3 of the Constitution, Federalist Number 78, Marbury versus Madison. Explain how the exercise of judicial review in conjunction with life tenure can lead to a debate about the legitimacy of the Supreme Court's power. Precedents and stare decisis play an important role in judicial decision-making. Ideological changes in the composition of the Supreme Court due to presidential appointments have led to the courts establishing new or rejecting existing precedents. Controversial or unpopular Supreme Court decisions can lead to the challenges of the court's legitimacy and power, which Congress and the President can address only through future appointments, legislation changing the court's jurisdiction, or refusing to implement decisions. Political discussions about the Supreme Court's power is illustrated by the ongoing debate over judicial activism versus judicial restraint. Explain how other branches in the government can limit the Supreme Court's power. Restrictions on the Supreme Court are represented by congressional legislation to modify the impact of prior Supreme Court decisions, constitutional amendments, judicial appointments and confirmations, the President and states evading or ignoring court decisions, legislation impacting court jurisdiction. Explain how the bureaucracy carries out the responsibilities of the federal government. Tasks performed by departments, agencies, commissions, and government corporations are represented by writing and enforcing regulations, issuing fines, testifying before Congress, issue networks and iron triangles, political patronage, civil service, merit system reforms, and all impact the effectiveness of the bureaucracy by promoting professionalism, specialization, and neutrality. Explain how the federal bureaucracy uses delegated discretionary authority for rulemaking and implementation. Discretionary and rulemaking authority to implement policy are given to bureaucratic departments, agencies, commissions, such as the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Transportation, Department of Veterans Affairs, Department of Education, EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, FEC, Federal Elections Commission, Securities Exchange Commission. Explain how Congress uses its oversight power in its relationship with the executive branch. Oversight and methods used by Congress to ensure that legislation is implemented as intended are represented by committee hearings, power of the purse as a means to curtail the use of presidential power. Congressional oversight serves as a check of executive authorization appropriation. Explain how the President ensures that the executive branch agencies and departments carry out their responsibilities in concert with the goals of the administration. President ideology, authority, and influence affect how executive branch agencies carry out the goals of the administration. Compliance monitoring can pose a challenge to policy and implementation. Explain the extent to which government branches can hold the bureaucracy accountable given the competing interests of Congress, the President, federal courts. Formal and informal powers of Congress, the President, the courts over bureaucracy are used to maintain its accountability. Please make sure that you go through this review, go through your notes, make sure you know how a bill becomes a law, make sure you know the importance of committees, make sure you understand the leadership and the political makeup of committees, political makeup of the leadership in the House and the Senate, the different rules, whether it's filibuster, cloture, whether it's the House Rules Committee. Make sure you understand how a bill becomes a law. Make sure you understand the formal powers of both Congress, formal powers of the President, formal powers of the judicial branch, and then informal powers, which have basically come through tradition and political parties and just legislation. So make sure you understand the informal and formal powers, because definitely there's going to be a question about the number two question, not the argument essay, but the policy making. There's going to be something on policy making, whether it's a law by Congress or whether a scenario, something that happens with the President first or then Congress first, and then how they fight back and forth. Make sure you understand the checks and balances and how to check the President, how to check how Congress checks the President, how Congress checks the Supreme Court, how the Supreme Court checks Congress, how the Supreme Court checks the President, and how the President checks Congress and President checks Supreme Court. And like I've said in other things, impeachment is a check on both the President and Supreme Court. Remember, it's for wrongdoing. It's not for bad policy. And what I'm looking at in a lot of these cases is to have examples, and it's for bad policy. The Supreme Court made a bad decision. Whether you think Roe versus Wade is bad, whether you think Dred Scott is bad, whether you think Citizens United is bad, whatever the case is, there's a bad decision. What is then the other branches, what do they do about that? Impeachment is not number one. Impeachment is a solution, but that's for wrongdoing. That is for corruption. What will happen with a bad decision that you don't like? There could be a constitutional amendment. There could be not enforcing it. There could be, let's increase the Supreme Court to 21 people instead of 9. Let's decrease the Supreme Court size to 6. So there's different ways to check each other. Go through the different checks and balances. Make sure you understand that. Make sure you understand how committees affect lawmaking and how the different processes, joint committees, the conference committee, the rules committee, and how filibuster and how holds affect the lawmaking process, log rolling, pork barrel, those kind of terms, those kind of things. This is a very important unit. You'll probably have a question on this, so make sure you have your notes, have it organized, have this. So you will watch this video. Please take notes on something or just say what you learned from this, what you thought was interesting, how many of those things you can check off, say, I got it all, I understand all of those, or which things that you don't understand. And then basically you're going to type in the comments something about this video that made me show that you actually watched it.